I fixed the birth certificate, my mother-in-law Patricia announced, walking into my hospital room with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Baby deserves our family name, not yours. Wellington has such a better ring than Okafor, don't you think? She said it like she was discussing wallpaper choices, not the fact that she'd just committed identity fraud against my 3-day-old daughter. What Patricia didn't know was that the hospital registrar had already called me 20 minutes earlier, and the police were on their way. I was still in my hospital bed, exhausted from a difficult delivery, holding my daughter Amara against my chest. My husband Marcus had gone home to shower and grab clothes, leaving me alone with his mother for what was supposed to be a brief visit. "What did you just say?" I asked carefully, my arms tightening protectively around my baby. "The birth certificate, dear. I submitted it with the correct name, Amara Patricia Wellington. Much more distinguished than Amara Okafor Wellington, don't you think? All those hyphens are so awkward." She settled into the visitor's chair like she'd just done me a favor. "Besides, Wellington is an established American name. It'll be easier for her." My phone, sitting on the bedside table, buzzed. I glanced at it. Detective Rodriguez downstairs. "Can we come up?" I texted back. "Yes. Room 412. "Patricia," I said slowly, "where did you get the birth certificate paperwork?" "From the nurse's station, of course. They were very helpful. I told them I was the grandmother filling it out to help the exhausted new mother." She beamed. "They didn't even question it. And you signed my name on it? Well, someone had to. You were sleeping, and these things need to be filed within 72 hours. She waved her hand dismissively. "It's all taken care of now. You're welcome." The door opened. 2 people in business attire entered. A woman in her 40s with a detective's badge clipped to her belt, and a man in a hospital administrator's jacket. "Mrs. Okafor," the woman said. "I'm Detective Maria Rodriguez. This is James Chun, the hospital's chief administrator. We spoke on the phone." Patricia's smile faltered. "What's going on? Are you Patricia Wellington?" Detective Rodriguez asked. "Yes, I'm the baby's grandmother." "Who are you?" "I'm a detective with the fraud division." She pulled out a notebook. "Mrs. Wellington, did you submit a birth certificate for this infant today?" Patricia's face went from confused to defensive. "I was helping. My daughter-in-law was exhausted and—" "Did Mrs. Okafor authorize you to submit this paperwork?" "Well, no, but I'm family." "Did you forge her signature on the document?" The room went silent. "I wouldn't call it forgery," Patricia said stiffly. "I was acting in the baby's best interest." "Mrs. Wellington," James Chin interrupted, his voice professionally cold. "You submitted a legal document with false information and a forged signature. You changed the infant's legal name without parental consent. This is identity fraud and forgery, both felonies under New York state law." Patricia's face went white. "Felonies? Don't be ridiculous. I'm the grandmother. I have rights." "You have no legal rights to alter your grandchild's birth certificate," Detective Rodriguez said. "Mrs. Okafor is the mother. She and her husband are the only ones authorized to make decisions about their child's legal documentation." "This is absurd." Patricia stood up. "I'm calling my son. Marcus will explain that this is just a misunderstanding." "Please do," I said quietly. "Call him." Patricia grabbed her phone and dialed. I could hear Marcus answer. "Marcus, there are police here harassing me over the birth certificate. Tell them I had permission to." I couldn't hear his exact words, but I heard the volume of his voice from across the room. Patricia's face went from indignant to shocked to pale. "But I was just trying to, Marcus, you can't be serious. I'm your mother." More shouting from the phone. "She doesn't need that African name confusing everything. Wellington is a respected." The phone went dead. Marcus had hung up on her. Patricia stood there, phone in hand, looking between me and the detective. "Chinera, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them I had permission." "You didn't have permission," I said clearly. "You forged my signature on a legal document. You changed my daughter's name without my consent. And you did it because you're racist." "I am not racist." Patricia's voice went shrill. "I just think. You think my Nigerian surname isn't good enough for your granddaughter," I finished. "You think Okafor is too African, too foreign, too hard for people to pronounce. You've thought that since the day Marcus brought me home to meet you 5 years ago." Detective Rodriguez was writing everything down. "Mrs. Wellington," she said, "I need you to come to the station with me to answer some questions. You have the right to remain silent." "You're arresting me?" Patricia gasped. "Over a birth certificate?" "Over forgery and identity fraud, yes." What followed was the most surreal hour of my life. Patricia was escorted out of my hospital room in handcuffs, protesting loudly that this was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to help, that her son would fix this. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, looking destroyed. Chinera, I am so sorry. I had no idea she would. He sat down heavily in the chair his mother had vacated. I knew she had issues with your name, but I never thought she'd do something like this. She forged my signature, Marcus. She changed our daughter's legal name because she thinks being Nigerian is something to hide. I know. His voice was hollow. I just got off the phone with my father. He's furious. He had no idea she was planning this. What happens now? James Chun, who'd stayed behind, cleared his throat. The fraudulent birth certificate has been voided. We'll need you both to fill out the correct paperwork with your daughter's actual name. I've also flagged your file so that only you two can submit or modify any documents. No other family members will have access. Thank you, I said. Mrs. Okafor, I want to apologize on behalf of the hospital. Our staff should have verified identity before allowing anyone to submit legal paperwork. We're implementing new protocols immediately. After he left, Marcus and I sat in silence, Amara sleeping peacefully between us, completely unaware of the chaos swirling around her. I need to tell you something, Marcus said finally. This isn't the first time my mother has done something like this. I looked at him sharply. What do you mean? When we got married, she tried to convince the church to print the programs with your name as Chinera Wellington instead of Chinera Okafor. She told them you wanted to take my name fully, that the hyphenation was a typo. Marcus, the pastor called me to confirm because something seemed off. That's when I found out. I confronted her, and she said the same thing, that she was just trying to help, that Okafor was too complicated for our families to remember. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I made her apologize to you. Do you remember that weird apology she gave at the rehearsal dinner? I did remember. Patricia had said something awkward about accepting our choices that had seemed odd at the time. Why didn't you tell me the context? Because I was embarrassed. Because I thought I'd handled it, that she understood boundaries now. He laughed bitterly. I was wrong. Over the next few days, the story exploded. Patricia's arrest made local news. Grandmother arrested for birth certificate fraud. The hospital released a statement about enhanced security protocols. My phone filled with messages from family and friends, most supportive, some from Marcus's extended family accusing me of overreacting. Patricia's sister called me directly. Chinera, Patricia made a mistake, but did you have to press charges? She's family. She committed a felony against my newborn daughter, I said. If a stranger had done this, would you think I was overreacting? But she's not a stranger, she's someone who thinks my heritage isn't good enough for her granddaughter. That's not a mistake, Aunt Claire. That's racism. The line went quiet. She never had a problem with black people, Claire said weakly. She has a problem with African people. She has a problem with African names. She has a problem with her granddaughter being proudly Nigerian American instead of just American with an asterisk. I hung up. The legal process took 3 months. Patricia was charged with forgery in the 2nd degree and offering a false instrument for filing. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. Community service, no jail time, maybe probation. The prosecutor called me before accepting any deal. Mrs. Okafor, this is your case. What do you want to see happen? I thought about it carefully. About Amara, about the future, about what justice actually meant here. I want her to understand what she did was wrong. Not just illegal, but morally wrong. I want her to understand that erasing my daughter's Nigerian heritage isn't helping. I want consequences that actually mean something. What would meaningful consequences look like to you? Mandatory cultural competency education. Community service with immigrant rights organizations. A formal apology in court on record. Probation with the condition that she has no unsupervised contact with my daughter until she completes all of the above. The prosecutor was quiet for a moment. That's more restorative than punitive. I don't want to destroy her life. I want her to become someone who deserves to be in my daughter's life. The plea deal was structured exactly as I'd requested. Patricia pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of falsifying business records. She received 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service with a refugee resettlement organization, mandatory enrollment in a year-long cultural competency program, and a court order restricting unsupervised contact with Amara. At the sentencing hearing, the judge asked Patricia if she wanted to make a statement. She stood up, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked genuinely remorseful. Your Honor and Chinera, I want to say I'm sorry. Not just for the legal violation, but for the hurt I caused. I told myself I was helping, but the truth is I was ashamed. Ashamed that my friends would ask about my granddaughter's name. Ashamed that I'd have to explain it's Nigerian. Ashamed that people would know my son married someone who wasn't like us. Her voice broke. That shame made me try to erase part of who Amara is. And that was wrong. That was deeply, fundamentally wrong. She looked directly at me. Chinera, you have every right to keep Amara away from me. But if you'll allow it, I want to do better. I want to be a grandmother she can be proud of, not one who tried to hide half of who she is. I didn't respond. Not then. 18 months later, Patricia completed her community service and her cultural competency program. Her coordinator at the refugee center called me. Your mother-in-law has been one of our most dedicated volunteers. She's worked primarily with African refugees, Nigerian families specifically. She's learned some Igbo phrases. She's asked genuine questions about culture and heritage. I don't know what happened between you two, but she's really put in the work. Patricia sent me a letter. Not asking to see Amara, just updating me on her progress. She included photos from a Nigerian Independence Day celebration she'd volunteered at, wearing traditional clothing, helping serve jollof rice. I'm learning, she wrote. Learning the history I should have asked about years ago. Learning about the richness of the culture I tried to erase. Learning that names carry power and history and pride. I hope someday you'll trust me enough to be part of Amara's life. But I understand if you don't. I've earned this distance. Marcus and I talked about it for weeks. Finally, we agreed to supervised visits. Patricia could see Amara, but only in our home, with us present. The first visit was awkward. Patricia brought gifts, children's books about Nigerian folktales, a stuffed animal wearing traditional Igbo clothing. She asked permission before holding Amara. She didn't overstep. She's beautiful, Patricia said softly. Amara Shinonso Okafor Wellington. Every part of her name is beautiful. It's been 3 years now. Patricia isn't perfect. She still sometimes says things that reveal her unconscious biases, her incomplete understanding. But she catches herself. She apologizes. She asks questions instead of making assumptions. Last month, she hosted Amara's 3rd birthday party at her house. The theme was Nigerian and American cultural fusion. She'd researched everything, the decorations, the food, the music. She'd invited her friends and made sure they knew how to pronounce Amara's full name correctly. To my granddaughter, she said in her toast, Amara Shinonso Okafor Wellington. All of her names, all of her heritage, all of who she is. I'm sorry it took me so long to celebrate that. Amara, oblivious to the history, just laughed and clapped for cake. Later, as guests were leaving, Patricia pulled me aside. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving me the chance to do better. A lot of people wouldn't have. You earned it, I replied, by actually doing the work. Not just apologizing, but changing. The birth certificate, she said. I think about it every day. How close I came to stealing part of her identity. How arrogant I was, thinking I knew better than her own mother what name she should have. But you didn't succeed, I said. She's Amara Shinonso Okafor Wellington. All of it. Always. Patricia nodded, tears in her eyes. All of it. As it should be. Identity fraud can be corrected with paperwork. But the mindset that drove it, the racism, the shame, the desire to erase heritage, that takes real work to change. Patricia did that work. And now Amara has a grandmother who celebrates every part of who she is, instead of one who tried to hide it. Some people never change. They apologize to avoid consequences, then return to the same behaviors. But some people look at their mistakes and decide to become different. Patricia became different. And my daughter, Amara Shinonso Okafor Wellington, with all her names intact, will grow up knowing that people can change, that accountability matters, and that her heritage is something to celebrate, not hide. All because a hospital registrar made one phone call, and I chose consequences that demanded real transformation instead of just punishment. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. Sometimes it's about making space for people to become better, even when they've forged your signature and tried to erase your daughter's name.